Boy, oh boy, this was a challenging and complicated turn for me, and that's going to make it sort of difficult for me to summarize exactly what happened because I went back and forth during the turn. Maybe I'm going to attack France, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm going to attack France, maybe I'm not, maybe I need to fight Russia at one point, and then I decided against that. So rather than go through intricately and in chronological order every single thing that I thought about, I'm going to keep this simple. I decided to throw my lot in with Russia and Austria to play out alliance, maybe that's a little too strong of a term, some teamwork with Austria and Russia, and see where that takes me. The way I assess the game strategically, my best opportunity for capturing any more centers is by attacking both England and France. That's because England decided to go kamikaze against France, and I've been working with England on this. It seems like that's very credible. England's disbands make sense of that. And to attack Russia in this scenario seems like a fool's errand. So it was possible that I could just try to focus on attacking England, but that would mean cooperating with France. And the more and more I thought about it, coming into the endgame with a still viable France maybe makes it most likely that France will be the contender for a third place in the draw. I don't know how we're really counting draws in this match, but Austria and Russia, if that alliance plays out, the most common third partner for that alliance is France. And if France is still in pretty good shape, then maybe it would be France in the end. So I worked with France and Italy as best I could in terms of press, and told them everything I thought they wanted to hear and made suggestions on what their moves could be and whatnot. I did everything possible consistent with working with them because at various points I thought that would be how I wanted to continue. I also said everything England wanted to hear about attacking France together, since that no matter what, that was what I was hoping England would do. And I also told Austria and Russia what I thought they wanted to hear, but I negotiated with them a little more transparently. And that's because I had something I was trying to accomplish. So I decided at one point that, all right, I think I just need to attack France. That seems like the best move for me. But I wanted to play like I was reluctant to do this so I could somehow drive a bargain, get some leverage out of this. That I would say, listen, Austria and Russia or Russia, I'm only going to attack France if you can do something for me. And that's being pretty stern, since I had already asked them to build according to my expectations, and they did do so. But I thought, I'm the weaker of the three powers. I should play hardball a little bit. I don't really have anything I can threaten them with. I'm not going to attack them. So what was my leverage? Okay, I can say I'm only going to attack France this turn immediately if Russia can promise me some help. And I went around and around with Russia about this. The Russian player rightly skeptical of, why do you need another center, and come on, and I've already got a pretty good position. Don't you want to attack France? It's all those points were very good, but I hopefully bluffed my way into saying, no, I really need to see I want you to promise to support me into Edinburgh. And that's a center that Russia, of course, has his eyes on. I got you to support me into Edinburgh so that I'm sure to get a build and catch up with you a little bit. That's what I want to see for me to attack France. At this point, I had already entered the orders in for me to attack France. And I know that I ran the risk of alienating the Russian player, but ultimately the Russian player agreed. Okay, I'll support you into Edinburgh, but you better give it to me next turn or the turn after. And I said, yes, no problem. And I mean that. I was really just trying to extract some kind of concession from those players if I was going to work according to their wishes. I am somewhat nervous that if I lower my defenses too much, they'll come after me. But nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? I say this often on my blog, that there's no way to do well in diplomacy, and certainly no way to win unless you take major risks at one point. And the odds of me getting a solo win in this game seem so weak anyways. I don't feel like I'm giving up much. I'm risking my ability to have a strong second or third place in the draw. All right, I don't value that much anyway. So if when you're watching this video, Russia, hey, you were reading the situation correctly. I was really just trying to extract a concession from you that with nothing, really, without much bargaining power. And so if you watch this video and you feel like I I pushed you a little bit over nothing, but that's diplomacy for you. Maybe it'll work out for me, maybe it'll backfire later, we shall see. So at the end of this turn, here's what I decided to do. I don't think France is going to cover Picardy. I don't think England's moving there. I don't think France is going to cover Burgundy. So I moved my armies to Picardy and Burgundy. I also decided that if I was going to leave Munich, I should move my army there to avoid temptation from Austria. And therefore, I'm going to move my army to Munich. I decided to move Denmark to North Sea, not supported by Holland, just a naked move because I don't think Russia or England is going to move there. And I decided to move Holland to Belgium since even though most likely where that's going to go later on is back up into North Sea, I figured it's a slight improvement if I move it to Belgium this turn. So, and I'm moving my fleet at Berlin to Kiel. If all this goes according to plan, I'll have a position where my 3 fleets are mostly in the north and positioned for the most part westward, and my army's digging deep into the south. There's a possibility of getting captured somewhere. I could be blocked from every single point. It is possible for France to block me from capturing Marseille and Paris. It is possible for France or England to block me from capturing London. And it's possible for Russia, who I think is moving to Norwegian Sea, to block me from capturing Edinburgh. This whole turn could go bust for me, but I thought, hey, I'm making videos about this match. I should go big or go home. So I'm going to take a risk here and I'm going to attack. Yep, I'm backstabbing an ally, France, who was a pretty good ally to me. But to you I say, unfortunately, your situation is not that great tactically. You've kind of outlived your usefulness. With England kamikazing and you not really able to defend Italy anyway, I think you're going down, and I want to get something for it. Sorry, them's the breaks. Yes! I came into this turn in a great mood. All my moves were quite risky. None of them were supported. All of them could have easily been blocked, but I had the correct information on how England, France, and Russia were going to move their pieces. So all my moves succeeded. That's awesome. It's a great feeling. I obviously have burned a bridge with France and probably Italy as well, but I'm okay with that as I think those players are probably going to go down pretty soon. I spent very little time this turn speaking to France and Italy. I mostly talked to England and Russia just to figure out what my options were and what they were willing to do to support me into supply centers. Since on this board there's no way for me to guarantee that I can capture a supply center on my own, it was important that I put some effort into finding out what supports those players are willing to offer me. From the previous turn, Russia had said, hey, I'll support you into Edinburgh. We agreed to do that. So I know I had that in my pocket, but if England was willing to support some of my attacks, then maybe that's the better way to go for a couple of reasons. One, I'd rather not capture a center that I'm eventually going to have to give to Russia anyway. That can kind of be awkward. And for two, I'd like to bring down France as fast as possible since I have just betrayed this player's trust after leaning on it for quite some time. So I talked to England, and England said, oh yeah, whatever you got, I want to bring France down, let's do it. So we reached an agreement that I would move my army at Burgundy to Paris, my army at Picardy to Brest, and my fleet at North Sea to London, and England's gonna use the fleet at English Channel to support my army at Picardy into Brest, which creates a configuration of moves where France can't get any captures. I'll explain what we're thinking here. If France covers Paris using Gascony, then that means France isn't support holding Brest, which means that the attack will work, the supported attack I'm making will work unless France cuts the support at English Channel using Wales. And if France cuts the support at English Channel using Wales, then my move into London will succeed and I'll get a build. But no matter what happens, there's no way for France to get any capture. What I think England and I are hoping, what we're seeing as the ideal plan, is that France moves Wales to London and bounces my fleet at North Sea, which means that my attack on Brest will work and England won't lose as many centers, and France will go down. But I'm okay with getting into London instead. That's not a big deal for me as long as I get a capture. I am putting trust in England here, and I trust England a little less than I trust other players, that's for sure. Especially since England seems so desperate. I really weighed whether, I believe Russia will keep his word. If Russia says he's going to support me into Edinburgh, that will happen, and I will surely get the capture. And I'm not so sure if England's going to keep his word. He might somehow mess with me here. and prevent me from getting a capture. But even though that seemed possible, overall I felt like England was telling the truth. It seemed credible to me, and the outcome a lot more beneficial than moving my fleet into Edinburgh if it were to succeed, so that's what I decided what to do. And I informed Russia of the same, and Russia and I reached an agreement that Russia would convoy an army into Clyde, seeing that probably Russia would succeed with that move. That would be more likely to succeed. It wouldn't result in Russia getting a large number of captures, and then on the future we'd be ready to knock out the rest of the centers in Great Britain together. Probably I'm going to end up giving Liverpool and Edinburgh to Russia once this happens, since that army will be able to make moves on both those centers, and I won't have much bargaining power in that regard. But that's okay. Beggars can't be choosers. In this situation, I'm a relatively weak player, so to catch up at all, I feel pretty good. I think this is a great turn for me. I sure hope I made the right bet in who to trust. Yes! Oh, what an awesome feeling. The turn worked exactly as I hoped. All the players whose word I depended on kept their word to me, and I was able to get a capture. England was deserving of my trust this turn. Russia played as I hoped, and I kind of think that I preferred that I captured London over Brest, so that England has no choice but to hole up in Iberia and perhaps help me out a little bit, and will be unable to help Russia, since with that capture, England's going to have to disband and will probably disband English Channel. And indeed, after I spoke to England, England said, yep, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So that proceeded exactly as I wanted. As far as my build goes, to me the choice is rather obvious. I should build an army. Germany, that has more fleets than armies, is usually not that bright. So that's not me. I think I know how to play this power pretty well, and I want to balance out my 3 fleets with another army. I am interested in what the Russians going to do. So the Russians' fleet that was invading Italy got dislodged and disbanded, and that means even though Russia didn't make a capture, Russia gets a build. And Russia's build will, I think, send a lot of information about Russia's intentions. If this is rebuilt as a fleet in Sevastopol, that means that Russia probably still considers Austria to be somewhat of a threat. If Russia rebuilds an army at Warsaw, that'll make me pretty nervous. So I talked to Russia somewhat about what Russia's plans are. The winter turns for this particular backstabber game only last 24 hours. They're shorter, they're half the length of the normal turns, so we didn't get to talk very much. The Italian told me that the popped unit, the unit that was forced to disband Russia's fleet in Italy, was arranged, or somehow something happened between Italy and Russia that allowed this to happen. Italy could be lying just to make me and or Austria nervous, but that does seem kind of funny, so I'm curious to see what happens. And Russia didn't tell me precisely what his bill was going to be before the turn ended, so that leaving that hanging, well, that's something to be worried about for a future turn. I decided I should build my army in Kiel, since that's slightly tactically more advantageous. That could backfill Denmark or move further into Ruhr, and an army at Berlin might just scare Russia a little bit. So I told Russia, hey, I'm building an army at Kiel. Look, we both of us have moved in such a way to show that we have a pretty good degree of trust. I trust you now. At the end of the turn, I feel pretty good, and I can't wait to see what happens with the negotiations on the following turn.